Welcome to the HETI Open Forum. And this open forum is a forum where we, after my presentation, are inviting ideas, anything that comes to your mind, including campaigns, and what you expect from HETI. What can HETI offer you, and how can we make your life better, and actually how can you contribute to HETI as well. I think by now everybody knows I'm Gisela Heimsath-Rhodes, president for 2 more days. And and since this is our 50-year celebration, I was thinking we present an overview of HETI's history between 1974 and 2024. It all started in 1974 at a conference, which was a national conference, more or less, in Paris, and where the idea kind of bubbled up that not necessarily we need not only national programs, but we need to talk big. We need to talk internationally, because something happened in America, something happened in France, something happened in Germany, and why reinvent the wheel? Let's talk together and especially try to find out the scientific background about therapeutic riding. So in the 50s, the pioneers, they already started working with horses, but that was mostly medical doctors. And then at the same time, the riding for the disabled started on a competition base. So move fast forward. In 76, then first the program was in 74 in Paris, in France. And in 76, everybody started talking about therapeutic riding as a generic term. And that was a term that everything else fell under. In 1979, the Congress already expanded a little bit, and it said it was riding a sport for the at that point it was mostly under riding a sport for the disabled. Then in 82, the Congress gave an overview of the international situation, and there was the horse and therapeutic riding, hippotherapy, and physiotherapy with and on the horse was under hippotherapy, and then special education using riding and vaulting popped up. And then riding and vaulting as sport for the disabled. How far are we on there? 88, not that yet. So, and during that Congress, the idea became that not just to organize international conferences, but to really organize as an organization, an international organization. Of course, and then the name was agreed as RDI, Riding for the Disabled International. And in 85 in Milan, it was the first time where president was voted in, and that was Dorothy Ames from Canada. And the general secretary was Jane Wykeham Musgrave from Great Britain. And she created an office in her back room. And then in 1988 in Toronto, there were people from Europe, North America, Middle East, and Australia, New Zealand. And that was the very first RDI meeting. And for this presentation, I dug really deep in all these minute books, and I was happy to find these minutes with that logo, and you can see the people that attended here. And a lot of people are still here. Can you believe it? So from the top, there was Kushner, Belgium, René du Lubersac, I probably butcher the name, sorry. Canada, Dr. Gillian Lawrence, Denmark, Annette Strandtorp, Finland, Sanna, where are you? Sanna is here. Yeah, friends, René, let me check, Anita from Israel, there she is. And Italy, Octavia, there you are. And so on. These people are still around, and there you go. And during that Congress in I think it started in 88, and please, you old people, correct me if I get anything wrong, all right? So in 1991 in Denmark, that's where the first constitution was presented. And I was told that Norma Pierce, that was another secretary later, but she was around as a board member. She was sitting, typewriting in the back room. And of course, there was no such thing as fax machine or I guess they were copy machines, right? But it was really last-minute correction so that RDI could be registered. Now, the next problem was where to register, because it's an international organization. And any country, no country was agreeing to take RDI as an organization, except for Belgium. Marie-Therese, where are you? Hooray to your country. And not only, I think the main key was to register without charge, right? Of course, we have to, I mean, that's very nice, but of course, every time we want to change something, we have to go to the Belgian king. So that's a little cumbersome, but we take it. And a new executive board in 1991 was voted in, and Dr. Karl Klüver from Germany was the president, and we created, or they created the Constitution, and the Constitution was actually later updated in 2003 and 2014. We'll get to that later. So, according to the Constitution, the International Committee and the Bureau or Office is governed by the International Council. Now, the International Council can vote, and the International Council consists of the federation members. Okay, the national organizations. And in the beginning, the idea was that there per country is only one federation member, kind of like the UN. However, that became a little cumbersome because in some countries there were more than one federation member, and they were supposed to, all the federation members were supposed to come together and then vote within HETI as one vote. And I mean, you know how the horse community is, many opinions, many situations. So that became a little cumbersome, and that was changed then later that every federation member has a vote. Okay. And then later we voted that the voting does not only take place at a Congress, but also electronically. Okay, so that everybody really has a chance to, every federation member has a chance to voice what's important to them. Okay. Oh, and of course we have members, we have other members. so, and as you can see, this is really like a, what's the word, Zahnrad. It's like a gear, you know what I mean. All these organs influence each other. It's not just that the International Council or that the International Executive Committee dictates. No, HETI members influence the Executive Committee, and then the Executive Committee and the International Council, and vice versa. And by the way, the International Committee there can only be one member per country on that. So there can't be two members from America, or I run under Germany, by the way, and or from Germany. It's really one per country, which makes for interesting Boardsmeeting. Okay. Oh, and then the HETI members, we have task forces depending on the topics that need to be discussed, and material developed, strategies developed, and so on. And then off we went. So these are all the congresses that we have put on every 3 years, and you can see we've been moving around the world from New Zealand, USA, France, Hungary. We were here again already in 2003, Brazil, Germany, Greece, Taiwan, Ireland, Korea, and now back to Hungary. And next time it's going to be in Norway. So these are the challenges. When I went through the minutes, I said, oh my, yes, over and over and over again. We need money. Funding is an issue. So it was then and it is now. One issue is that because we are registered in Belgium, and Belgium is basically the only country where we can fundraise for tax, that the person who gives us donations can write it off their taxes. And that is one big issue that we have, that we cannot, that it's cumbersome for us. Communication, it's not only the languages, but it's also, in the past, we didn't have internet, we didn't have fax machines. It was literally everything done by mail or by telephone, and then whenever possible, get together face to face. And that has disadvantages, of course, but also advantages. Now, in the beginning, there were ideas about standards, international standards, and then cultural differences were recognized right away, so that you can't put on dictate standards. When FRDI, RDI and FRDI was instituted, it was the decision between does our organization have any authority over our federation members, or are we a forum to disseminate ideas and support and information and so on. And it was decided that that's what we are. We are the forum. We cannot police the world, and we don't want that. Okay. We started out with several committees. There was right away, people thought, we need information. We need to disseminate the information and find out what is actually out there already in articles, in research, And so the first bibliography was done in 1992, and I think Octavia started it, right? Octavia started it with Jean Tabay. Jean Tabay started it, but you chimed in. Yes. So, hands on for Octavia. And then, of course, we said, okay, we have now all this information and everybody's doing stuff. We need to create a journal, a scientific journal. And the first one was done in 1974. And the areas were medical, educational and training, and, well, no, fundraising was another, that was not in the journal. That was another committee. Okay, so, but I'm jumping back and forth between times. Before the journal came, there was this annual bulletin. And this annual bulletin was, hold on, who started this? Oh, by Jane Wycombe, I'm butchering this, Wycombe Musgrave from the UK. She started the annual Writing for the Disabled International Bulletin, and again, it was on a typewriter, copied, and then shipped to every single member of the organization. And it was followed by, Jenny Bailey from the UK, when the office moved then from the UK to Australia. Norma Pierce took it over, so that was 1968 to 1990. And then we had all these newsletters that went out. They were, I think, semi-annual. And finally, this evolved into the Global Gallup. And this is a very, very nice, professionally done, Kirsten, done magazine done by our current executive director. And please give it a hand. Because I personally can say I'm really proud of that, because that magazine, Global Gallup, covers literally the world with beautiful articles, beautiful pictures, and I invite everybody to send in material and tell us what you're doing and read what other people are doing. It's for free on the website for everybody, right? Okay, so. So there is the first bibliography. Then there is a directory of education and training. That was the other thing. Who is doing what where? We wanted to, or you guys wanted to do, an official publication so our membership would know and find according to their need training. Okay, and out of this directory of education and training, there was added a different later the skill bank, where not only the federation member can say what they're doing, but also individual practitioners. For example, in one of those directory of trainings, including skill banks, I'm in there and I say, yes, I offer interactive vaulting courses on my farm in Newcastle, Maine. And we are thinking about it, and we talked about it, and that we will resurrect this directory again. It kind of went by the wayside when the office moved from Maine to Ireland, because we had to switch website. Our website, the old website, got hacked, and then it kind of went the wayside. But we are recreating it. Oh, and then we had a HETI membership directory where the federation members had a chance to showcase the organization, showcase who they are, how many members they have, and what they're doing, what they're offering, and which I preferred. Of course, I initiated it, but I really like to flip through it and see the differences. There were the Finnish ponies in their big coat, and the riders were just covered in clothes because they don't stop equine assisted services in the winter. And then there was Portugal or Italy, I forget which picture it was, where everybody was in t-shirt and the horses were totally different. So you could get an idea about the cultural and geographic differences of the world. And last but not least, the scientific journal. And if you have any questions about the scientific journal, talk to Alexia over there. She's our current editor. In the first one, you know, the one on the left there, was published with selected proceedings from the 8th International Congress, and it was in New Zealand. And it made it progressed through the years, and we are really proud to say that now it's peer-reviewed, it's cross-indexed, is that how you say it? Oops. Sorry. Cross-ref database, and it is available for our members. You can download the articles, and it's free. And again, we're looking for submissions all the time. Talk to Alexia. So again, now I'm going back to the task forces. As you can see on the right side, there are a lot more task forces because the field has so expanded. Now we're not only having journal and medical and educational and training, we have also terminology. Big issue right now, education, membership, marketing. I mean, the list is long, and it's depending on what our needs are and what your needs are, and hopefully we'll know after this what else you want. We can create a task force and invite you to push this forward. One last thing, not last thing, but last year, webinars started, and they're a huge hit. This is really wonderful, and Vera was one of the who initiated. And these webinar presenters are, or the webinar task force is trying to cover every single aspect of equine-assisted services. It starts with role of posture and pain in equine behavior. So we're not just looking for the riders, the medical part, but we are also looking at the horse, the equines, and over different models, horseboy model, and then Janet Jones talked about the equine vision. So it's a slew, not slew, what do you call it? It's a lot of different topics, and we appreciate all the presenters that are doing this for free. And the webinars are free for everybody, but then they get onto our get archived on our website, and members can access them again for free. AIR, one of the topics that comes out of these open forums were that nations were looking for a registry, a national registry where practitioners in that country can register and saying, I have these qualifications and these certifications, and I adhere to these standards, and then they can register there and service users, and so can check on that and can be sure that the people that are listed there have met certain quality standards. And it is important that these should be on a country level, because laws are different according to country, and traditions, customs, cultural customs are different. So we had a pilot project. Ireland is still in the project, I think 1 more year, something like that, yeah. And UK just created an a separated individual organization, and they're running it just for the UK. What's the name of that again? EASP, right? Okay, so that was the idea. Hetty will help, Hetty will support, and then off you go. Okay. Okay. Since 2000, we have a Mary Selway Swift Development Fund. And Mary Selway Swift was a lady from RDA Singapore. And in her will, she bequested a certain amount of money, and her requirements or her ideas were to promote and improve the educational opportunities, training, and quality of writing therapy. And she was very much concerned about developing countries. She was concerned that developing countries don't have the means to come up to par. So we give very small. This fund is very modest. We give small amounts out, and with this one small amount, I think 2 years ago or last year, we had 2 instructors from Uganda go to SADA in South Africa and received some trainings. So anybody who from a developing country, or please send a note to the office and ask if they could benefit from that. Back to the beginning. In 1987, Professor Klüver already talked about the triangle relationship between horse, rider, and instructor. And it could be another equine, it could be another client, student, whatever you want to call them, and the therapist or teacher. And the main idea was that the horse is a partner and not a tool. Okay? And out of that all, 50 years later, or 48 years later, the ethical guidelines for the service providers and equines are basically based on that idea that everybody is a partner and have equal importance. So the ethical guidelines, I think, I don't know if you've heard about them yet, but hold on. I'm losing my space here. So the first part of these ethical guidelines are talking about the service providers, and these guidelines they address the fundamental principles: do no harm, respect, integrity, competence, and accountability. And I think tomorrow, on Friday, there is a seminar or a roundtable about ethical welfare for tomorrow, okay? So if you want to hear more details about that, please go to that tomorrow. And then the second part of these guidelines address the equine welfare. And it is the obligation and ethical responsibility for all service providers to manage the welfare of all equines. And those 5 provisions for equine welfare after Mellor: good nutrition, good environment, good health, appropriate behavior, and positive mental experience. Okay? And all these details will be discussed tomorrow further. We have it translated in Finnish, Hungarian, Japanese, Russian, Spanish, and Swedish. So again, going back, in the first place, when we started out, it was really but it was sport, medicine, and education. And then the next version was then therapy, education, sport, and recreation, leisure. The main subjects of what we called therapeutic riding. And then it got complicated. So on the left, this is the model from the German Kuratorium for Therapeutic Writing. And we're lucky to have Dirk Baum over here, who can help us twiddle it around later or tomorrow in the education forum. And because they divide it into psychology, pedagogic, sport, medicine, and psychotherapy. And inside the circle are all the different professions that belong to that. Now, I don't know if you were all in the last or in the presentation where I was talking about this, we call it wheel, the wheel from an Erasmus Plus project between Finland, Ireland, Poland, Haiti, and who am I missing? Italy, sorry. And where we came together and discussed the different categories of equine-assisted services and what are the key aspects of it. What are the service, who are and what are the service providers, what do they need to know, what are the service users, and so on. And this one we will discuss tomorrow again in the education forum further. But as you can see, the longer we are in existence, the more complicated it gets. And then now we're throwing in the terminology. It's not just therapeutic writing anymore or hippotherapy. In the beginning, it was hippotherapy, therapy, medical, remedial, riding, and vaulting, and sport. And now, because the activities expanded, we're talking now, when we're describing the assisted services, it can be mounted, it can be riding, vaulting, carriage driving, or just ground-based interaction, horse observation, or talking about the equine environment, sensory, talk, or web-based. So the field is just getting huge. And so terminology, because everybody talks about different terms. And where's Sana? When is the terminology presentation? Or was it already? Oh, tomorrow. Okay. There are, how do you say it? People want to try to figure out what one term means. And there are efforts out there that say we have to call this, this, and this, and this. And that just doesn't work for all the countries. In order, Hetty started to say, no, wait a second, we go the other way. We say, okay, what do you mean when you say therapeutic riding? What do you do when you say equine-assisted psychotherapy? And then out of that became a matrix, which you will all learn about tomorrow. Education, just another one. Between 2010, in the beginning, everybody said, we need international standard, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and then it was not that easy. So then we created a curriculum, and between 2010 and 2018, we actually went around to different countries and taught therapeutic riding. However, the way we were doing it with going twice to the countries and with 2 instructors and then certified people, it was not financially sustainable. So that kind of went to the Lee side, and now we're kind of in the process of reinventing the Hetty education. And it's been a interesting discussion, and please come to our forum because we want your input. We have some ideas, but not everybody likes our ideas, and we need you, what you want from us, okay? Did I say that before? Social license to operate. Who was not in Harriet's presentation 5 minutes ago? So I don't, well, those two come to me later and I'll explain what it was all about. It's basically about social license to operate. In the last maybe 5 years, people become more aware of activities in the horse world that are not good for horses and that they are not good for equine welfare. And for example, in the racing industry, they are now, especially in the USA, they are now under many more laws than they were before, so that the horses are treated better. This is really the short version of it. Now, and that can happen in any form. For example, there are no more lions in the circus. What are the other examples? Doesn't matter. And we, as the field of equine-assisted service, are fairly safe so far, because everybody gets a warm heart when we say what we're doing. However, we need to really dig deep and see that we can do well by our equines, and that we do well by our service users, and that we don't get into the area where people get upset what we're doing with the horses. Okay, that was really, really the short version of it. So, in a nutshell, who are we? We are worldwide. So we have 44 federation members in 29 countries, but we are all together in, what was it? 10, 20, 30, 40, 58, 48 countries, right? We honor our pioneers. There was Jenny Bailey, Mary Longden, Carl Kluwer, Anita, there you are, Octavia, there you are, Gillian, Sister Chiara, Jean Tabay, René Garrigue, Norma Pierce from Australia, Gundi, where's Gundi? Gundula Hauser, Marie-Therese, there she is, and Sana, and then many, many more. I tried to find as many pictures as possible, but, well, space is limited. And I really, truly, I honor these people because they really set us on a great path. Thank you. Who are we? We care about all equines, not just horses. Gundula Hauser, she reminded me that in Denver, 1997, at the presentation, at the practical day, here comes this 90-plus-year-old woman, proud as heck, in cowboy hat, cowboy gear, all by herself, into this huge arena riding a mule. And she did a beautiful presentation, and the mule was wonderfully behaved, and it really stuck in our minds that not just horses, but equines too. We are working hard. We always work together, try to find results, and this was one of the Erasmus projects. And then we vault at midnight. This was when we were in Finland, and there's Joanna. She's trying to climb up on the vaulting barrel, and we had a lot of fun with that. We celebrate. This was in Greece. In a tiny, tiny tavern. We all swapped in, and I don't know how we managed, but we actually danced around all these tables, and I don't think anybody was on the table, but we were. Okay, well, we play, we celebrate, but we are also serious. So we are serious about research, and there are Pebbles, and here's our HHRF contingency, and and I think it was in 2019, whenever it was, we started talking, and when we said, geez, we have this similar, very similar missions, and why don't we start working together and really figure it out and work together. And we had monthly meeting with no agenda, just throwing stuff out. What do you want to think about? And it was like we call it Kaffeeklatsch. And it was, I think it was very protective, because out of that came the idea, we need a repository. We need to get all the information, kind of like the beginning of 50 years ago, when they started out with the bibliography. Now we want to get the bibliography and everything else that's out there into a repository where people can have access to it. Right now, scientific research is behind a paywall. Unless you are a professor or student or connected to anything educational, you can't get to it, or it's not easy. And we are working to try to get it open access and all together. And yes, and we applied to an Erasmus Plus project, but the first version got rejected, but that doesn't get us down. So we reapplied, and we're actually awaiting right now, probably within the next weeks, if that project will be accepted. So that's what it is. We connect, communicate, and collaborate.